The man on screen is laughing, covered in mud, having just pulled a $100,000 Jeep from a raging river. He's the hero of the off-road world, a family man who built an empire by helping strangers. But as the cameras cut, the mood shifts. Hidden beneath the adrenaline and the grit is a secret that almost destroyed everything he built. A betrayal hidden in plain sight. A line he crossed that would turn his fans into jurors. And when the truth finally surfaced, nobody could look at Matt the same way again. This is the heartbreaking story of Matt from Matt's Off-Road Recovery. Before we uncover what really happened, tell us in the comments, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding about this story? The yellow Jeep Cherokee didn't look like much at first glance. To the casual observer rolling through Hurricane, Utah, it was just another aging off-roader with oversized tires and a winch bolted to the front. But to the thousands of families stranded in the red rock deserts of southern Utah, that bright banana yellow rig became a beacon of hope. It was the vehicle that would pull a submerged Jeep from the raging Virgin River, drag a Ford truck up 250 feet of mountain slope when no one else would even try, and traverse trails so treacherous that even seasoned off-roaders turned back. Matt Wetzel had built something extraordinary from the ground up, not just a recovery business, but a lifeline for strangers who had made a single wrong turn in the desert. Matt's journey into the world of off-road recovery started far from the dramatic rescues that would later define his YouTube channel. Growing up on a small family farm in southern Utah alongside 7 sisters, he learned early that survival meant fixing what was broken. His father's Massey Ferguson 750 wasn't just a tractor, it was a classroom. While other kids played, Matt was keeping the machinery running, welding old equipment back together, and learning the engineering side of things. He'd spend more time working on the tractor than working in it. Anyone that works around old farm equipment will learn how to weld and the other repairs to get you through the end of the season, he later recalled. Those lessons in self-reliance would prove invaluable, though he had no idea just how far they would take him. Before the bright yellow banana became a YouTube sensation, Matt spent years finding his path. He toyed with becoming a plumber. He worked for Stout Roofing, eventually starting his own roofing company. But his heart wasn't in it. When he heard about a towing company for sale, he took a leap and bought it, launching Red Ryder Towing. He painted all his trucks the same color, a branding lesson learned from demolition derby days, where a recognizable vehicle kept fans engaged even with a 5th-place finish. But it was social media that changed everything. Matt noticed something curious: pictures of clean vehicles got ignored, but images of cars buried in sand or mud captured attention. People doubted he could get them out, and that doubt created curiosity. That curiosity would become the foundation of an empire. But as the subscribers grew into the millions and the yellow banana became an icon, Matt faced an impossible decision that would test everything he had built. The same community that cheered his rescues would soon turn against him, and the truth that emerged would threaten to destroy the very thing he had worked so hard to create. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe so you never miss our next documentary. What viewers didn't see between the mud-soaked rescues and the million-dollar smiles was a quiet, steady stream of paperwork moving through the offices of Winder Towing. From January 2019 to August 2020, Matt's company submitted claims to AAA that would eventually total over $15,000. On the surface, they looked like routine towing reimbursements, the kind of transactions that happen thousands of times a day across America. But beneath the surface, something was deeply wrong. The Utah Insurance Fraud Division had received a complaint, and when investigators started pulling the threads, they found a pattern that didn't add up. The first thread involved a construction material delivery. A customer needed supplies transported, not a vehicle towed. Matt allegedly told the individual to submit 3 tow claims to AAA instead of paying him directly for the delivery. AAA paid Winder Towing $2,800. The customer later admitted to investigators that their vehicles were never actually towed. Then there was the case of a disabled truck in Apple Valley. The owner didn't have a AAA membership at the time. Matt reportedly instructed him to join AAA and then wait a few days before filing a claim. It was a workaround, a creative interpretation of the rules that seemed harmless in the moment. Perhaps most damning was the incident that had been filmed and uploaded to Matt's own YouTube channel. In April 2020, Matt recovered a Polaris RZR from Sand Hollow State Park, an off-road vehicle. The problem? AAA's policy specifically does not cover off-road vehicles. The owner admitted to using a friend's AAA membership and submitting a claim that said Winder Towing had rescued a friend's truck instead. The claim was fraudulent on its face, and the evidence was public for anyone to see. When investigators confronted Matt, his response revealed the moral gray area he had been operating in. He admitted to the arrangements, acknowledging that the claims were wrong on the front end, but fair on the back. In his mind, every job had a legitimate service attached to it. He wasn't stealing from AAA, he was simply helping customers who couldn't afford immediate payment by using the insurance system as a delayed billing mechanism. But the law doesn't recognize good intentions. False documentation is false documentation, regardless of whether a service was eventually performed. The investigation continued, and the consequences would be far more severe than Matt could have imagined. The complaint arrived quietly, the kind of bureaucratic paperwork that usually gets buried in a government filing cabinet and forgotten. But the Utah Insurance Fraud Division had seen enough patterns to know something was off. When they started pulling the records from Winder Towing's AAA claims. Between January 2019 and August 2020, a troubling picture emerged: over $15,000 in payouts that didn't match the reality of the jobs performed. The division had received a tip, and now they were digging deeper into the operations of a man whose face was becoming increasingly recognizable to millions of YouTube viewers. What investigators found were three distinct patterns of fraud, each revealing a different way Matt had bent the rules. The first involved a construction material delivery. A customer needed building supplies transported, not a vehicle towed. According to charging documents, Matt instructed the individual to submit 3 tow claims to AAA instead of paying him directly. The customer admitted to investigators that his vehicles were never actually towed, yet AAA had paid Winder Towing $2,800 for the false claims. It was a workaround that seemed harmless on the surface, a creative interpretation of the insurance system as a delayed billing mechanism. But the law doesn't recognize good intentions. The second case was even more revealing. A customer in Apple Valley needed a disabled truck towed but didn't have a AAA membership. Matt allegedly told him to sign up and wait a few days before filing a claim. The claim was later filed as a tow from Las Vegas to Washington County, which investigators said never occurred. The actual tow was from Apple Valley, a much shorter distance. The discrepancy was small, but it was a lie nonetheless. The third case was the most damning and the most public. In April 2020, Matt recovered a Polaris RZR from Sand Hollow State Park, an off-road vehicle that AAA's policy explicitly does not cover. The owner admitted to using a friend's AAA membership and filing a claim that said Winder Towing had rescued a friend's truck instead. The fraud was documented on Matt's own YouTube channel, where the recovery was filmed and uploaded for hundreds of thousands of viewers to see. The evidence was right there in the open. When investigators finally spoke with Matt by phone on December 7, 2020, his response revealed the moral gray area he believed he was operating in. He admitted to the arrangements, describing them as wrong on the front end, but fair on the back. He maintained that every claim had a legitimate service tied to it, that he had provided numerous services to customers before asking them to file a claim, using AAA as a kind of delayed payment system. In Matt's mind, he was helping people who couldn't afford immediate payment. But the law sees things differently. False documentation is false documentation, and the investigation was only just beginning. If this story surprised you, share it with someone who would enjoy uncovering forgotten Hollywood stories. The courtroom in St. George, Utah, was nothing like the Red Rock Canyons where Matt had built his reputation. No mud-splattered vehicles, no cheering fans, no cameras capturing a dramatic rescue. Instead, there were polished wooden benches, the quiet shuffle of legal documents, and the weight of a decision that would determine everything. On February 22, 2022, Matthew David Wetzel stood before 5th District Judge Jeffrey Wilcox and entered a plea that would change the trajectory of his life. The charge that had originally been filed in late October 2021 was a second-degree felony insurance fraud, carrying a potential sentence of up to 15 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. The investigation had revealed over $15,000 in fraudulent claims filed between January 2019 and August 2020. But the resolution was far different from what prosecutors had initially sought. Instead of a felony conviction, Matt pleaded no contest to a single Class A misdemeanor, false or fraudulent insurance claim. It was a dramatic reduction that suggested the legal system had recognized the gray area Matt had been operating in. His attorney, Jason Velez, framed the outcome carefully. He acknowledged there had been technical violations in the claims process, but maintained that Matt's conduct had matched the spirit of customer service that AAA has a reputation for. The plea, he explained, reflected a dispute over process rather than the substance of the claims themselves. Matt's position had remained consistent from the beginning: every claim had a legitimate service attached to it. He had provided the work. The issue was the documentation, not the actual service. The sentence that followed was remarkably lenient given the original charges. Judge Wilcox ordered Matt to serve 18 months of probation and pay restitution totaling $17,073, $15,328 to AAA and $1,745 to Utah's Insurance Fraud Division. No jail time. No felony record. The Utah Attorney General's office expressed satisfaction with the outcome, noting that Matt had admitted guilt, agreed to pay full restitution, and would comply with the terms of his plea agreement. For the prosecutors, justice had been served. For Matt, it was a chance to move forward. But the courtroom was only one battlefield. The court of public opinion, millions of viewers who had watched his rescues, who had trusted his integrity, was still deliberating. And that verdict would prove far more complicated. The judge's gavel had fallen. The probation terms were set. The restitution had been ordered. But as Matt walked out of that St. George courtroom in February 2022, he stepped into a different kind of trial, one that would be fought not in a chamber of law, but in the comments sections, forums, and social media feeds of over 1 million subscribers who had watched his every move. The legal system had offered him a path forward, but the court of public opinion operates by its own rules, and its verdict was far from certain. The reaction from his core audience revealed a fascinating split. Many longtime viewers who had followed Matt since the early days, when it was just him and an iPhone filming recoveries in the Utah desert, rallied to his defense. They understood the context that the headlines often omitted: Matt had provided genuine services to stranded motorists. He had pulled vehicles from mud, sand, and water when nobody else would. He had often done it for free, or for far less than the job was worth, because he was making far more from the YouTube views than the tow itself. His business model had evolved into something strange and unprecedented, a recovery operation that was also a media production company. The punishment should fit the crime, one forum commenter wrote, and the fact is he was providing a service and helping people. Others pointed out that what Matt had done, telling customers to sign up for AAA and file claims after the fact, was essentially standard practice in the towing industry. "I can't tell you how many cars we dragged outside the gates so that AAA could tow them," one person noted. Matt, in this view, hadn't been running a scam. He had simply been caught doing what everyone else did. But there were other voices, quieter but persistent, that raised uncomfortable questions. Some argued that fraudulent claims ultimately raise insurance rates for everyone. Others pointed out the uncomfortable irony that Matt had filmed and uploaded evidence of his own questionable practices, including the April 2020 recovery of the Polaris RZR, a vehicle explicitly excluded from AAA coverage. The charges had been filed after the Utah Insurance Fraud Division received a complaint, suggesting that someone in the community had seen the videos and made the call. Perhaps the most concerning development came from a tragedy entirely unrelated to Matt's legal troubles. In 2023, a man named Ryan Woods lost his life during a vehicle recovery when a drop receiver hitch came through his windshield and struck him in the head. Witnesses at the scene said the participants had been discussing their strategy and ended up executing what they'd seen on Matt's off-road recovery videos. Critics seized on the connection, arguing that Matt's methods, including the use of tow balls for recovery, could be dangerous when replicated by amateurs without proper training. Defenders pushed back vigorously. Matt's equipment, they noted, was custom-built and carefully maintained. He used elastic kinetic rope, not the static straps and chains that contributed to the fatal accident. "I've never one time ever seen him use any of the equipment listed in that article to do a recovery," one viewer insisted. The tragedy, in this view, was a result of people copying what they saw without understanding the underlying safety principles. Matt wasn't responsible for every viewer who attempted a recovery without proper gear. But the question lingered, unspoken yet undeniable: when you build a channel around dramatic rescues, when you make it look easy, when you become the example that millions of people follow, do you bear some responsibility for how they interpret what they see? It was a question Matt had never anticipated when he first picked up that iPhone and started filming. And it was a question that would continue to follow him long after the legal case was closed. The courtroom doors closed behind Matt Wetzel in February 2022, but the journey was far from over. 18 months of probation lay ahead, along with the weight of restitution payments totaling over $17,000. Yet something remarkable happened that Matt himself probably never expected. The channel that had been built on the foundation of those dramatic rescues didn't collapse under the weight of the scandal. Instead, it grew. From nearly 900,000 subscribers at the time the charges were filed, Matt's off-road recovery surged past 2 million, accumulating over 1.1 billion views across more than 1,000 videos. The numbers told a story that contradicted every expectation. The community that could have abandoned him chose to stay. The supporters who had rallied in forums and comment sections proved their loyalty wasn't conditional. They recognized something that the headlines had missed: a distinction between bending the rules to help people and running a genuine scam. Matt had never fabricated a rescue. He had never invented a stranded motorist. He had always shown up, done the work, and pulled people out of impossible situations. The fraud was in the paperwork, not the service. And the service continued. The yellow banana kept rolling. The team kept filming. Ed, the octogenarian fan favorite with his infectious positivity, kept appearing in videos. The business model had evolved, too. Matt's Off-Road Recovery now operates with transparent pricing, a $500 minimum for off-road rescues, with discounts for customers who agree to be filmed. The filming discount, once an informal arrangement, has become a standard part of the business, benefiting both the channel and the stranded motorists who need help but can't afford the full cost. By 2026, the channel had become something even larger than its founder ever imagined. More than 2.1 million subscribers. Over 1.17 billion total views. The Matt's Off-Road Games, an annual event held at Sand Hollow State Park, draws crowds of off-road enthusiasts from across the country. The record games, the friendly competition, the sense of community, it's all still there, thriving in the Red Rock Canyons where it all began. The controversy hasn't been forgotten, but it has been contextualized, understood as a chapter in a larger story rather than the defining moment. If you enjoyed this documentary, like the video and subscribe for more true celebrity stories every week. What Matt Wetzel built wasn't just a towing business or a YouTube channel. It was a community bound by a shared belief that when you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, someone will come for you. The man who drove the yellow banana made mistakes. He cut corners. He bent rules that shouldn't have been bent. But he also showed up, day after day, year after year, to help strangers who had nowhere else to turn. That's the part of the story that the headlines couldn't capture. And that's the part that kept his audience watching long after the scandal faded.